Hi, everybody, and welcome to Making Sense with Dustin LeMontagne of Mackey Research Capital. I'm Bryn Griffiths. Dustin, how you doing today?
Doing real good, Bryn.
Okay, so we're right in the middle of this election campaign federally here in Canada. That must be on the minds of a lot of people when they come to you.
Oh, without a doubt. They're looking at the present party in power and saying, what's the future going to hold?
It's really tough, too, when the policy isn't exactly being very defined. You have the current government, the Liberal Party, who are back on their heels because that's usually what happens with powers or the parties that are in power. And then you have the opposition parties who go a little more aggressive. With the lack of policy being mentioned through this entire campaign, and we're seeing a lot of sideshow, does that also make it very confusing for people?
Definitely. The blackface scandal that Trudeau's facing seems to be dominating the headlines, and we haven't seen a lot of policy out of any of the parties. A little bit out of the Greens and the NDP, but I think this is a two-horse race at the end of the day. And I really want to see policy from an economic perspective. I want to see the candidates talk about what they're going to do to get this economy going. Despite the rhetoric coming out of the present government, I see a very weak economy in Canada overall. Some positive spots in Ontario and Quebec. Most of that has been an increase in housing. And what the Liberals won't talk about is people going further into debt. They're taking that newfound equity and they're buying cars and they're buying, vacation properties and they're going on holidays. That's what's been stimulating the economy out east, which is a little bit of a false sense of security. Alberta went through that, in the roughly 2003 to 2007 stage where property prices almost doubled. And that really, adds to your feeling of security. And when your house goes up, it feels like you got a little more money in your pockets. That's done. I don't think we're going to see property prices increasing in those GTA Montreal markets as quickly as it has in the last 3 or 4 years. So when that slows down, you're going to need something to generate some positive GDP in this country.
So with a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for, a guarded nature of people, how do they view that when they come to you and they talk to you about how they want to move forward if they're a little hesitant?
I think when you're talking about the average individual investor out there, they're definitely cautious right now because they see a lot of turmoil going on, and they're not getting a real level of comfort from their government. There's just mudslinging back and forth. A lot of big promises are coming out now. Mostly what I'm seeing is in regards to climate change. Policy on climate change is not going to provide people good jobs. And at the end of the day, every Canadian, their number one goal is to provide for themselves and their families. So that's what the type of policy I want to see coming out of these parties, whether it be Liberal or Conservative. Because
people are so polarized with one party or another, do they freeze up a little bit when they come and talk to you about investment, or are you able to start to steer them in a certain direction, even though it's uncharted waters?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think a person's political affiliation is going to impact the advice I'm giving them on their portfolio. I mean, I'm still going to be buying those sectors that, again, are fairly conservative. Banks, utilities, pipelines, telecoms. I'm a big fan of sectors that pay dividends. If a company pays a dividend, it's a good indication that they're making profits, and at the end of the day, that's what you want to be investing in. So from a short and long-term perspective, the present government in power won't have a huge impact on the advice I'm giving to clients on their portfolios. Now, having said that, you can have a government in power that creates an ideal setting for companies to do business. And I'm not seeing that out of the present government. I think that some of the policy, especially when I look at the policy directed towards Alberta in regard to the resource sector, some of these bills that have come out, the changes in the National Energy Board, the tanker ban on the West Coast, it feels a little bit like Alberta's being targeted by our federal government at the present moment. So I'm looking for policy out of the campaigns that is going to be more friendly towards our province.
But we have two parties, the Conservatives, and we also have the Liberal Party that are the front runners. For the other smaller parties, it's pretty easy to say pretty much anything at this point, is it not?
I think so. I mean, when you look at the numbers that the NDP and the Greens are polling, I think it's about 20% combined. That could be interesting on the left side of the ledger because the more people that vote Green and NDP, the less people that are going to vote Liberal. I don't think those are votes coming out of the Conservative pocket. So definitely the policy that is coming out of those parties on the left, will be meaningful in terms of the seats, but not so much for investment portfolios. I'm not putting a lot of time and effort studying those two parties.
Does it concern you when you hear talk about a minority government, and does that affect you at all?
I think that it could be detrimental for Alberta if we saw, the Green Party being the sway vote one way or the other. For instance, if the Liberals were to get in on a minority and you had Elizabeth May calling the shots on policy, her extra votes count. I think that Alberta would have a tough time for however long that government lasts. If the NDP were to get in and they're the sway vote on a minority government, either Conservative or Liberal, I think that it would be a little bit of an easier pill to swallow for Alberta. But at the end of the day, the government in power won't dictate our long-term focus on managing portfolios for our clients.
So Dustin, and people just roll along. They just forge ahead. And while they're interested and curious as to what will happen here during the election, people still want to recognize that, hey, listen, I still have to live in November and December and January after an election, or do they just hold back?
No, I think people just roll with the punches, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to change your entire investment philosophy or your strategy based on the present government. So we're still going to be managing in terms of long-term goals and objectives for clients. We're going to match up risk with those long-term goals and objectives, and at the end of the day, that's going to drive behaviors.
We do remind everybody how important your vote is, and it's the 21st of October, so make sure you get out there and you exercise your democratic right. And is there anything else we need to touch on when it comes to this election?
I don't think so. Just make sure that you know some of the issues before you get out there and vote, and vote with your pocketbook, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be most important.
Okay, Dustin, that's it for today. We'll have more helpful hints coming your way next week. As a reminder, the markets and financial numbers change frequently, so what is said by us today can easily change by later today and overnight. And if you'd like some more information, contact Dustin at Mackey Research Capital. Phone number where they can get a hold of you.
780-905-7729.
And your email address?
dlamontagne@mackeyresearch.com.
And once again, check out that website, which is mackeyresearch.com. Dustin, thanks for your time today. Always great checking in. And that's it for today. Thanks for listening to Making Sense. Have yourself a good one.